Well, good morning. This Sunday morning, April 5th, Palm Sunday. We are going to do our Sunday school class as we do every Sunday. Today we're in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 31. Deuteronomy, chapter 31. We'll talk about a couple of things here in this chapter. Some of it is prophetic, some of it is happening as we speak in the chapter currently. We'll see that Moses has a birthday today, 120 years. Today is his birthday, but in this particular chapter, God also tells Moses that his time is coming to an end in this physical life, that he will die. And we'll go through a few things. It's a small chapter this particular Sunday, not a lot to expand upon. But we'll see that God knows our heart. He knows the intent of our heart. He knows our all of what we're going to do. Nothing catches him by surprise. The times that we live in today, the things that we're going through today, none of that is caught God by surprise. And obviously here we'll see the same thing. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 31, beginning with verse 1. And Moses went and spake these words unto all Israel. And he said unto them, I am 120 years old this day. I can no more go out and come in. Also the Lord has said unto me, thou shalt not go over this Jordan. So God speaks of a couple of things. He speaks of his age, 120 years old. He speaks of his physical condition. He says that he's no longer able physically to go out and come in with them to wars and things and battles and other things that they had to do. He's just no longer to do it. And then also he speaks of the purpose of God for his life. God obviously has given a purpose for the life of Moses to lead the people from Egypt unto the wilderness and bring him to this point. And now the purpose of God for his life is not that he go over the Jordan with them to possess the land that he's promised his fathers. That'll be Joshua. That'll be someone else in this chapter. God chooses them. But in these two first verses, Moses speaks to all the people. Again, speaks of his age, speaks of his physical condition and lack of ability anymore. And then he speaks of God's purpose for his life. Now, verse 3. The Lord thy God, he will go over before thee, and he will destroy these nations from before thee, and thou shalt possess them. And Joshua, he shall go over before thee, as the Lord has said. So now Moses explains a couple of things here. Moses is giving some encouragement to the people in general, saying, don't believe that because I'm not with you, you're not going to be able to do the things that God has commanded for you to do, because God is going with you. And God has given you another person to go before you also. Verse 4, he continues with this encouragement to the people. And the Lord shall do unto them as he did unto Sihon and to Og, kings of the Amorites, and unto the land of them whom he destroyed. He reminds the people in his encouragement of the people that God is the one that is doing all of the things. We simply yield ourselves to God, allowed his purpose in our life to take place and to be played out through us. But it is God who really takes care of us, is what he's telling them. Verse 5, and the Lord shall give them up before your face, that ye may do unto them according unto all the commandments which I have commanded you. So Moses is saying everything that I'm telling you is going to come to pass, because all that I'm telling you is coming from God himself. Look at verse 6. He continues to encourage me. Be strong and of good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. So God is very clear in that he is the one that's leading. He is the one that's doing it. He's the one that we need to trust. He's the one that is going to make things come to pass. Verse 7, and Moses called unto Joshua. This is the man that was to replace or succeed Moses, and said unto him in the sight of all Israel, be strong and of a good courage, for thou must go with this people unto the land which the Lord has sworn unto their fathers to give them, and thou shalt cause them to inherit it. So Joshua is the chosen man of God. He is going to be going with the people, and he's going to cause them to inherit that land. Look at verse 8. And the Lord, he it is that doth go before thee. He will be with thee. He will not fail thee, neither forsake thee. fear not, neither be dismayed. So he continues this encouragement, first of the people in general, and then of the chosen men of God. Moses takes him as the person who has led the chosen people of God for now 40 years in the wilderness. He's telling him, you are blessed of God. You are chosen of God. You will be able to accomplish these things because God has chosen you. Look at verse 9. And Moses wrote this law and delivered it unto the priests, the sons of Levi, which bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and unto all the elders of Israel. So Moses very clearly wrote this book, the book of the 5 books, the 5 books that we have studied, the first 5 books of the Bible, the books of the law. Moses is the writer. He is the author. He finishes it here, and he gives it to the sons of Levi, the priest, and to all the elders of Israel. Look at what it says. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, in the solemnity of the year of release, in the feast of the tabernacles, this is when all the people of God come together to the Feast of the Tabernacles. Verse 11, when all Israel is come to appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose. Again, this is speaking of future things to come. Now from our generation, in our time, the days that we live in today, we know that the place that God would have chosen would be Jerusalem. That's the place that is being spoken of. That's where they all would come together to appear before the Lord. Let me read verse 11 again. When all Israel is come to appear before the Lord thy God, in the place which he shall choose, Jerusalem, thou shalt read this law before all Israel in their hearing. So he's given him charge. He's given him a commandment of what they're to do. Whenever the Feast of the Tabernacle comes, they would all come from all of the different cities and towns that they lived in unto Jerusalem. They would all appear before the Lord God. And then they were to, the sons of Levi were to open up the book of the law and read it for them. What is the purpose of that? Look at verse 12. Gather the people together, men and women and children, and thy stranger that is within thy gates, that they may hear and that they may learn and fear the Lord your God and observe to do all the words of this law. So the book of Deuteronomy is coming to a close. We're in the last section of it. It is the 5th book of the Bible as we have it today. It is the 5 books have been the law of Moses, the Mosaic law. It has been finished. It has been written by Moses. It has been given unto the sons of Levi, the priests, and the elders of Israel to be kept in the ark of the Lord. There are 3 items that are in the ark of the Lord. The first one is the rod of Aaron. If you remember, the rod that was the stick, the rod that Aaron used that budded. Having been a dead stick, it was quickened, and then it budded. It was brought to life. That is in the Ark of the Covenant. The second item is the manna. The manna is a testimony to God, as a memorial to what God did for them while they were in the wilderness and they needed to be fed. The manna is also in the Ark of the Covenant. And then the 10 Commandments. The book has been finished, is closed, is given to the sons of Levi to be placed in the Ark of the Covenant. But it is to be broken out. It is to be used, right, by the sons of Levi to be read unto the people. Why should they read? So that they could hear, so that they could learn, and so that they could do all the things of this law. This kind of reminds me, I have a note next to this particular verse in my Bible. Our pastor is working with us in teaching us and instructing us from the scriptures. And we know that we have this thing about reaching, teaching, and serving. We're to do that because the way that we love God is through other people, and we are to reach out to them, we are to teach them about God, and then we are to serve them in the needs that they have. Well, this is very similar to me. Notice that all the people were to be gathered, and they were being reached by the hearing, because the word of God, the law would be read to them. That's reaching them. And then the purpose of reading it to them so that they will learn. So that's teaching them. And then to serve them is to be able to do all the things of the law for that generation of people. Verse 13, and that their children which have not known anything, may hear, may learn to fear the Lord your God as long as you live in the land whither you go over Jordan to possess it. So this would to be continuous going forward, to be read, to be taught to kids so that they would hear it, they would understand it, learn from it, and then they were to follow it and do it and fear God. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. For anybody in this earth of us that believes that they're wise or that they possess wisdom, I would question and I would ask, do you know God? And do you fear God? And if so, then you are a wise person, because that is the beginning of wisdom, the fear of the Lord. Verse 13 again, and that their children, which have not known anything, may hear and learn to fear the Lord your God, as long as you live in the land whither you go over Jordan to possess it. And the Lord said unto Moses, now God is speaking to Moses again, behold, thy days approach that thou must die. God tells him, Moses, you're 120 years of age. You have served me faithfully. You have been with me. God has already communicated to Moses that he is not going over Jordan to possess the land. He's not coming into the promised land, the land that flows with milk and honey. Moses already knows that from God. And he tells him his days are coming where he will die. Look at what it says. Call Joshua and present yourselves in the tabernacle of the congregation, that I may give him a charge. And Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tabernacle of the congregation. Notice that God says that he's going to give Joshua a charge directly. If you have paid attention to what we've gone over this chapter thus far, you notice that Moses has already given Joshua a charge. That charge that Moses gave does not come from Moses. It comes from God. Now God says, though, that he is going to give Joshua directly a charge from him, directly. And notice that it's going to be the same charge, but there is a difference. So Moses is a mentor to Joshua. Moses is the one that is communicating right now the things of God to the chosen people of God, to include Joshua. And now God is directly going to speak to him and give him that same charge. Verse 15, and the Lord appeared in the tabernacle in a pillar of a cloud. And the pillar of the cloud stood over the door of the tabernacle. So God's glory appears in the tabernacle where Joshua and Moses have presented themselves before the Lord. And look at what happens here. Verse 16 on downward, the Lord is going to communicate to Moses how much he knows us in our heart. He knows what's going to happen to the chosen people of God. He knows what they're going to do. And he knows all things. And he shows it here. Look at verse 16. And the Lord said unto Moses, behold, thou shalt sleep with thy fathers. This is future tense. Moses is going to die. And this people will rise up. Which people? His chosen people, the Israelites. They're going to rise up and go a-whoring after the gods of the strangers of the land. Notice that he keeps saying anytime that Moses speaks to the people, it says to gather all the people of Israel and the strangers within their gate. So there are people, strangers. Who are these strangers? That's the mixed company, as it is mentioned in scripture in other times. Those are the people from Egypt that were probably half Israelites and half Egyptians that chose to follow them into the wilderness, that were with them. Some of them were not faithful to God. Some of them had been faithful to God and continue to follow them. But those are the people that is talking about him, to go a-whoring after the gods of the strangers of the land. Those people that came out of Egypt were idolaters. They had many gods, and they were in the land. Whither they go to be among them, and will forsake me and break my covenant which I have made with them. So God is saying, this is what's going to happen to you, Moses. You're going to die. You're going to go to sleep with your fathers, to be with all those that have gone before you. And then all these people, instead of following what you've taught them, they're not going to do that. They're going to go a-whoring after other gods, it says. Look at verse 17. Then my anger shall be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured. And many evils and troubles shall befall them, so that they will say in that day, are not these evils come upon us because our God is not amongst us? That's very right. And I think that they will know that, but they still would do everything that God says that they're going to do. Look at verse 18. And I will surely hide my face in the day from all the evils which they shall have wrought. In that day are turned in the day that they're turned unto other gods. So God says, look, they're going to go through that because they have turned unto other gods. Rather than being faithful to me, who have led them, who have cared for them, who have created them, who have given them someone to bring them out of Egypt, out of slavery, cared for them through the wilderness, fed them, gave them all the things that they need. Their shoes never got old. The clothes that they wore never got old. I took care of them, made many miracles, saved them every time from every evil out there. But yet they're still going to do that. Look at verse 19. Now therefore write ye this song for you, and teach it the children of Israel. Put it in their mouths, that this song may be a witness for me against the children of Israel. So Moses is going to write a song that is going to remind them of their rebelliousness and all the things that they did against the Lord. And that's in chapter 32, by the way. But look at verse 20. For when I shall have brought them into the land which I swore unto their fathers, that floweth with milk and honey, and they shall have eaten and filled themselves in waxen fat. Once they are settled, once they have eaten, once they have rested, once they are fat, look at what they're going to do. Then will they turn unto other gods, lowercase g, small g, and serve them and provoke me, the real God, and break my covenant. If you remember in chapter 30th, when I told you that God would make a new covenant with the people when Christ comes in his second coming and gathers all the people from Israel and brings them all to take over and possess the land again in its entirety, right? It brings them from all nations of the world. He gives them all the land that God had promised them in the boundaries that God set. It says to bring them back, and they're finally in the land of milk and honey, that flows with milk and honey. And they're going to break my covenant, he says, and that's why he's going to make a new covenant. He told us in the last chapter that the fathers have broken that covenant, and here he tells us again, speaking of the future, that they're going to do that they're going to break that covenant. Verse 21, and it shall come to pass, when many evils and troubles are befallen them, that this song shall testify against them as a witness, for it shall not be forgotten out of the mouths of their seed, their generations. For I know their imagination which they go about, even now, before I have brought them into the land which I swear. So God knows the condition of our heart. He says, even now they're doing those things. Look at verse 23. And he gave Joshua the son of Nun a charge and said, here's the charge of God directly to Joshua. It's pretty much the same thing that Moses had already told him, but this is coming straight from God. Be strong and of a good courage, for thou shalt bring the children of Israel into the land which I swear unto them, and I will be with thee. What a wonderful promise of God. What a wonderful thing. When God says this is going to happen, you don't even have to worry about the outcome, because God is going to make sure that it happens that way. Verse 24. And it came to pass, when Moses had made an end of writing the words of this law in a book, until they were finished, then Moses commanded the Levites, which bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, saying, take this book of the law, and put it in the side of the ark of the covenant of the Lord, your God, that it may be there for a witness against thee. The book of the law, again, is placed in the ark of the covenant of God. Verse 27, for I know thy rebellion and thy stiff neck. Behold, while I am yet alive with you this day, ye have been rebellious against the Lord, and how much more after my death? Now Moses is kind of recanting, if you will, what God said in verses 16 through 19, that these people are going to rebel against God anyway and not follow the commandments and not do the things that God had commanded. And now Moses is telling them, look at verse 28. Gather unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, that I may speak these words in their ears, and call heaven and earth to record against them. So God or Moses says, bring all the elders of the people. Let me talk to them once again to let them know that I know exactly what's going to happen. How does Moses know that? God has told him. In verses 16 through 19, he told them exactly what was going to happen with the people. So now he's going to say this. Look at verse 29. For I know that after my death, you will utterly corrupt yourselves and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you. And evil will befall you in the latter days, because you will do evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger through the work of your hands. Moses is saying, look, guys, there is going to come a time when you're going to rebel against God. You're going to do things that are against God. And then God's anger is going to be against you because you provoked him. Verse 30, and Moses spake in the ears of all the congregation of Israel the words of this song until they were ended. And then he tells the song that he has written because God had told him. We're going to cover that next Sunday on chapter 32. We're coming to the end of the book of Deuteronomy. It's been a wonderful study to me. I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot. And I pray that the same this happened to you. Until next Sunday, God bless you. And we'll look forward to seeing you soon.